Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to today's Bravo Leadership Conversation. My name is Susan Segal, and I am the CEO and President of the America Society Council of the Americas. It is truly my pleasure to welcome all of you to this conversation with Carlos Murillo, Regional President of Pfizer Latin America. During the conversation, we will be addressing the economic and social impact of the pandemic in Latin America and addressing future conditions in Latin America and assessing future conditions in Latin America post-pandemic. Carlos will be sharing some of his perspectives and insights that he has gathered throughout his 20-year career driving business and transformation in the pharmaceutical industry. This conversation is part of our 2022 Symposium and Bravo hybrid series, which is committed to providing access to leadership and promoting collaboration among industry and social leaders. Before we start, I want to thank our sponsors, Bank of America, the Jeffrey Group, the AES Corporation, Mambu Latin America, Pfizer, Chubb, Greenberg Traurig LLC, and MasterCard, as well as our media sponsor partners, America's Quarterly and CNN en Español. I'd now like to welcome you, Carlos. Thank you for being with us today. This is a real honor and pleasure because Pfizer has changed and impacted so many lives during the pandemic, and your leadership in Latin America has been critical to that end. So thank you for that. So these have been 2 years full of challenges. As we were talking about just 2 years ago, almost today, we shut down our offices and New York shut down. What are your reflections from a personal and a professional perspective?
Good morning, Susan. Good morning, all. First, allow me also to say that it's an honor to be here with you and actually share with you that it fills my heart with joy to be physically here with you. It's been a long time and we had many interactions over the screen. So the fact that we're here together, it really brings me joy, and it's a special moment. And I thank this opportunity to interact with you.
Also, by the way, it brings joy to my heart too. We're in the same room talking to each other.
It's a special moment. Being here back in New York after 2 years, it's really a special moment. And I also want to thank you for all the work you did over these past 2 years, Susan, bringing everybody together. I think your leadership also was fundamental for all of us. So appreciate that very much. So to your question, very recently I was reading this book from Gandhi, a fascinating book for everybody, I think, to read. It's My Experiments in Truth. And there's a passage there that says, human nature tends to show the best of itself in moments of trial. And I think what we've seen in the past 2 years is clearly an example of that. Nobody would deny that it's been hard times, very complex times, and obviously we have to recognize the profound impact on lives lost, and my heart and sentiments always go to the families impacted by it. But it also is brought to us the best things that we can have as human beings and as human race. When I look back in the past 2 years, Susan, I consider myself one of the fortunate people that got the chance to maintain his job and do it from the security and comfort from home, which was not the case for many millions. So for me, it was a moment of reflection and gratitude for what I had. It was a special moment as a family and personal moment because I had the chance to be with my dear 10-year-old daughter for best part of 1 year and so, and enjoy with her 24 hours a day. And I keep saying that for me, working from home and moving from one meeting to the other, but getting the chance to go out there and give her a kiss while she was in theory in a school remotely, couldn't that get better, honestly, and spending that time with them was great. So from personal perspective, I truly feel that I was one of the luckiest, and I actually enjoyed that opportunity of being closer to my wife and my kid and what we lived through. From a professional experience, I think we all know how complex the situation was for all the countries in Latin America, right? And the impact in health, but in the impact in the economies was severe, and we have all felt it. But I was also very fortunate to be part of an organization that we say internally made the impossible possible. It fills me with tremendous pride that 9 months after this whole thing had started, back in the beginning of March, 9 months after that, we were able to bring to the world this important hope, this important tool to allow us to get to our normal lives. So the past 2 years have been intense from a professional perspective, where there were many restless nights. I also have to say that I even shared some tears during this moment because of what we were dealing with. But, I couldn't be more proud of what we achieved. And we made the impossible possible. So it was a special 2 years, I would say. And again, you play also an important role in this. And if I may, like you, I would like to ask you a question. This because I think you have been an example of leadership also during these trial times. So what did you learn in these moments of uncertainty and complexity that we have lived?
Well, I learned a lot. In some ways, I learned how important leadership really is, because we're not for profit. And so we could have gone and hidden in a hole, right? But what we had to do, and I was so sure of this, was train people in the 4 days before we closed the office to work digitally. Luckily, we had this technology that would allow us to do this. And I think the biggest challenge was to just tell people we weren't going to miss a beat. We had a program that was supposed to be in person, and we turned it into our first digital program the Monday. It was with Ambassador Chapman. And it was the Monday or Tuesday after we closed the office on Friday, and we just kept going. And so the most important thing, in my opinion, was to just keep going, not to miss a beat, not to be afraid of change, because our world was turned upside down. So we had to anchor and just say, no, this was the way it was going to be. We weren't going into the office. We were going to continue doing what we do. We were going to continue to try to drive dialogue between the public and private sector and the private sector as best we could virtually. And so that's what we did. The other thing which was really important to me was that I never wanted to cut staff. I wanted to keep everybody as a team engaged and involved. And I think we accomplished that. That was critical. And the third thing was we realized that we had to also think, we couldn't just think and be frivolous. But, a lot of our budget is about in-person programs. And when you took that away, you could really play with your expenses such that, frankly, we broke even. And we really thought that we weren't going to be able to. And that reinforced our ability to do what we do. We never stopped asking our members to be members. We got new members. We never stopped asking people to support our programs, our members, and people did support our programs. We rearranged the deck a little bit of what people got, but and so finally, it seems to me that we had to be decisive. We had to listen to what people were saying, both our team members and our members at large. We had to listen to what governments were saying, and we had to be compassionate because our heart broke for what was happening in Latin America. And so we had to understand that and be compassionate, both in terms of our team internally, as well as our constituents around the world.
Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
I think I've experienced the transformation you drove and how you adapted and how you maintain us all connected. So was, I think, a great example also how, organizations like this, not-for-profit also had to change and adapt to their circumstances.
We also learned about centers of excellence, which is something you just hear about in the private sector, but we were able with our 3 offices to say, what does each office excel in, and actually execute against that, which was kind of cool. So I'm going to ask you another question. Making the impossible possible seems a very strong and powerful ideal. How was it that Pfizer could do it? And what did it mean for you personally?
It's a combination of many things, Susan, but I'll start with something you started also answering, which is about leadership. And I have to recognize that we made the impossible possible because we have, I think, luck to have a very strong leader, that he really set the tone and of what needed to be accomplished. And he never gave up, and he really understood the special circumstances. We developed vaccines, we developed medicines. That's what we do. So it's not that we did something we hadn't done before, but there's a story in Pfizer now that when he requested the scientists to go back and to the lab and see how long it's going to take for us to try to develop a vaccine, the scientists came back very proud of themselves because generally vaccine you will launch in I think an average 12 years. And they had managed to reduce it to, I think, half of it, right? And they felt extremely proud. 12 years, half of it. And he said, that's not enough by a mile. You need to go back and rethink and redo it because we cannot wait for many years. And he said, we've been successful. You've been successful in the past. Now you have to forget how you did it because we need to do it very differently if we're going to really change and help this moment. And the result again was evident 9 months later. And I believe there were 4 reasons why we made the impossible possible, starting with this leadership. But the first reason was truly the sense of urgency. Right? I think circumstances like that gave everybody a different sense of the importance and the need, and that was the first reason. And associated to that, for me, there was a second reason, that it's collaboration. We achieved what we achieved collaborating. It was Pfizer with BioNTech. We had our previous collaboration with them. We were working already in a vaccine for influenza, but the CEOs, the companies were able to get starting in the new project in a matter of days without probably not contracts and things like that because of the urgency, but the sense of collaboration. And then the collaboration with regulatory agencies around the world to expedite the processes and share data as we were developing. Collaboration with literally hundreds of suppliers. It's a very complex process to manufacture this vaccine. So you had literally hundreds of suppliers and build from scratch something. So collaboration was, I think, a second great reason of why we achieved what we achieved. The third one is about taking risks. Generally, we do the development of medicines and vaccines in sequential order. You go phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Then once you have possibility of approval, and once it's approved, you start manufacturing the product, and that takes the number of years to take. This time, the company assumed the risk and said, we're going to do things in parallel. So we did phase 1 in parallel with phase 2 with phase 3. And we started manufacturing the vaccine at risk, even long before we knew it was going to be successful, it was going to be approved, but it was the only way to be able to have the vaccine ready if approved. So the level of risk that was taken was really significant. And finally, we're living in a very different moment in terms of the advances of technology. And what we saw with these vaccines, for instance, is really something we've been discussing for many years, which is the advance of science and technology in health. And now we have not one, but a number of vaccines with this very new concept of really actually using part of the RNA messenger, giving your body the instruction of your body to produce a protein similar to the virus. It's mind-blowing, but it's the advances of science. So we also, I think, got lucky within the circumstances that this got us at this moment. So the combination of all those things is what made possible that we achieved the impossible.
Yeah, I mean, the leadership was extraordinary. And your point about risk-taking as well. I mean, you really did make the impossible possible, and you created optimism in the world that something could end. So this willingness to take risk and to work together to kind of save humanity, in a sense, was so important. So the pandemic has really impacted healthcare beyond those suffering directly from COVID-19. Can you share some insights on the impact on patients suffering from other illnesses? I guess, how are you going to take this technology, which is extraordinary, and apply it more broadly?
Yeah, I definitely think that we now are starting to see also the side effects, if I could call it like that, what happened in the past 2 years related to other diseases, other illnesses and situations. We live what we live, and everybody was locked down. Literally thousands of people were not able to seek medical advice in time. We have a very large portfolio of medicines. So oncology is an important portfolio that we have, and we have partners all around the world in Latin America, key institutions that work treating cancer patients. And what we know is that over the past years, the number of new consultations and diagnosis of cancer decreased significantly. And it's not because cancer was gone. It's because people were not able to seek people was not able to go to the doctor and get diagnosed, right? Especially sick patients that are immunocompromised. They had to be in a strict lockdown, and they were not accessing their treatments. And in cancer, we already know that the sooner you get the treatment, the better prognostic you have. The more advanced you get a cancer, the more complex it's going to be. And we had like a pause in the treatment and diagnosis of thousands of patients. And now we're seeing that, because now we're starting to see diagnosis go back to normal, but it's in much more advanced stages. So the impact in health and even chronic diseases, many people stop their treatments. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more this side effect of people not having been able to get the diagnosis on time or the treatment on time, and we're going to have to deal with that as a society. Governments also were significantly impacted. They have to make tough decisions, and they have to prioritize testing, eventually vaccinations. So these other parts of the system were no longer priority. So that also had an impact. Now, not always bad. There were some positive developments out of these circumstances too. Telemedicine.
I was just going to ask you about telemedicine.
The growth of telemedicine has been really tremendous. And before, there was hesitation to use it. There was regulatory hurdles to use it. It wasn't really getting traction. But now it's there. It's there, and I think literally millions of people are benefiting from telemedicine. So you have that positive impact. And to your previous point, the development of new technologies like mRNA, it's opening a new worlds. And then if we have the time, I'd like to go more in detail.
Well, that would be really, really interesting. So I also saw that Pfizer is developing treatments for COVID-19 patients. What can you share about those innovations going back to COVID?
Go back a little bit to the previous question about how we made the impossible possible. One thing was to develop the vaccine. The other challenge was to make that vaccine available to people. It doesn't help to have a vaccine if it's not really used in patients, right? And we made great advances of that. It wasn't simple. I think from a personal, professional perspective, I was much more involved in that part of the challenge. But we were successful of getting our vaccine literally to billions people. But we all knew, the company knew, and our scientists knew since the very beginning that the vaccines are the most important tool we have and will have for situations like the ones we lived. There's always going to be a number of people that are going to get infected. So a proper treatment to avoid those people getting very sick and then up in the hospital with all the consequences was also part of the ask of our CEO since the very, very beginning. And in another great example of doing things differently and surprising us all, in 18 months, we were able to develop what's been shown in a large study with high-risk patients, that this antiviral that was developed reduces the risk of hospitalization and severe disease 90%.
Wow.
So it's extremely effective. And that's another great thing that we have, because we have vaccines, but we're dealing with the fact that many people are not getting vaccinated, which is an issue and that has other consequences. But now we do have also, for people that get sick, this very effective antiviral. Again, 90% reduction of the risk of hospitalizations. It's also extremely effective, extremely significant. So that's the other, I think, good thing that we saw coming out of this and that we have now.
That's fantastic. And I think it's the combination, as you say, of the vaccine and the treatments that is going to take us out of the situation that may be lingering or may not be lingering, as you were talking about before. So what's next, Carlos? How do you see 2022 and beyond? And what does a post-COVID Latin American look like? And if I can add one other question to that, because I have really been struck by this kind of innovative way that Pfizer has looked at everything, doing step one, step two, living in today. Will that continue?
So what's going to happen next, Susan? I think is a question that I got asked the most, because I think we all want to know, when is this going to end? What's going to happen tomorrow? And reality is that I don't think anybody knows for sure the full answer to that, unless of them all me. One thing I do have certainty of is that whatever happens, we have to keep prioritizing health in our society. I think these past 2 years show us that without health, the rest doesn't matter. So health has to keep being up there as a priority for all of us. Within that, we need to continue working on getting more vaccines into people. At least in Latin America, we started slow compared to other regions of the world, but then we were able to really exceed compared to other parts of the world. In the US, the vaccination rate is higher in most of our countries in Latin America than in the US and Europe. But that poses a big challenge for us as a society, which is we still have a big number of unvaccinated people. So that is probably one of the key factors that makes it so hard to answer what's going to happen. What I've learned from the people that understand this very, very well, they simplify it to me, is that the fact that we have literally millions of people unvaccinated, what it does, it creates a high viral charge in the environment. And that's perfect environment, like a petri dish, for potential mutations of the virus. That's the true risk that we have for people not being vaccinated. We have controlled it. The number of cases is lower, especially hospitalization. We're seeing that. But as long as we have this high number of people unvaccinated, the viral charge is going to be continuing high, and we have the risk of higher mutations. So that's a big unknown in terms of what might happen. We experienced it with Omicron, the impact that it had in terms of the spread and how fast was very significant. Fortunately, the vaccines provided coverage for that mutation, and we were still protected for severe cases. Mm-hmm. Most of the cases that got infected with Omicron and ended up at the hospital were people that were not vaccinated. But as a company, we keep track of that very much so. We're now developing already a vaccine specific for Omicron if it's needed. The company has committed to manufacture this year 4 billion doses. So if we see, and we did the same with the other mutations like Delta, if we see that there's need for a specific vaccine more tailored to the mutation, that's the beauty of this technology, mRNA, we will be able to supply it without impacting our estimate of 4 billion doses. So what happens, the mutation, and what we're going to need, the company is working on that. We mentioned treatment. Treatments are there. This treatment that we have is extremely effective, so that will help. And I'll go back also to a point I've made before about mRNA technology, because I think beyond the short term, beyond the current situation with coronavirus, mRNA is opening a new world in terms of health. And I think we're at the door of a very important change in the way we treat diseases. And it's not only viral diseases, but this technology is being proved that will manage infectious diseases, cardiovascular diseases, cancer. Pfizer, along with many other companies, are really speeding as much as possible the development of potential new drugs, vaccines with this technology. In short time, we were able to hire about 2,400 people. Wow. We created a separate structure dedicated to try to develop and speed up development of this new technology that, again, has shown its tremendous benefits in this situation. But it's only the tip of the iceberg of what I think we will be able to see. So I'm very optimistic about the future, actually, Susan, because I think we're, getting a handle of the current situation. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do have the tools. We have a better understanding, and the future overall with this new technology, mRNA, I think it's going to continue giving us great surprises.
And are you going to be able to, you talked about how you did phase 1 and phase 2 together, and phase 2 and phase 3, and you moved at warp speed. Do you think you'll be able to do that in the development of other applications beyond COVID?
We are internally really going through a big transformation now, because we also learned that there's a different way of doing things, right? The situation helped us and forced us to do it, but we were able to do it. So now we're going through this big transformation in which we're trying to apply many of the learnings and changes that we have, given what we had. And we're really restructuring, changing the way we're even structured, so as to be able to do more of what we did. Now, there's parts that we control, which is our internal development and processes. We're really challenging ourselves to think very differently. The CEO is talking about light speed, and now we're going through this process of light speed because we did it once. We showed that it can be done. We need to do it more. So that part we're controlling. We're changing. We need to change our culture, our behaviors, our structures, so that we can develop faster, get our medicines faster to patients' hands, and and be more reactive. Definitely a great learning. We need to collaborate more also externally, because this time we were able to do it, and we were able to get phase 1 in parallel, phase 2 and phase 2, phase 3, and so on and so forth, because we were working with regulatory agencies to achieve that. We need to be able to maintain that type of collaboration partnership for future developments, because if not, if we go back to the old world and the old processes and the steps and the regulatories that we had, the regulations that we have, we're not going to be achieved. So be able to achieve this. So we need to partner more and collaborate more. This transformation cannot be only internal; it has to be part of the environment. That's why also I think initiatives like the Summit of the Americas are so important, because if there's again a key learning for me of all this is the importance of collaboration and the work you guys do and bringing different parties together, because we need that. We're going to be able to take advantage of technology and the new frontiers that it opens up only if collaboration it's there. That's going to change the way we approach health and the health economies.
Yeah, I agree with you about collaboration. I think that is the most critical element as we go forward. And if we really want to leverage everything we've learned, it's only going to be through collaboration.
Yeah. And Susan, talking about collaboration, because again, I think you were a leader that traditionally, the council has been always about bringing people together, parties together, governments with private enterprises. When you look at this post-COVID world in Latin America, what do you think we can do to continue collaborating more?
Yeah, I think there's a lot we can do. One of the things that was also quite important for me throughout this process was our chairman, Andres Gluski, who's also the CEO of AES. And he, because they run electrical grids, had access to a lot of information about the disease. And that also helped us lead, some understanding of the science. And so as we go forward, I think understanding the science and where we are, and if there are other turns and twists of this disease, that we learn about that in advance. Or as we go. But I think that, going forward, people want to be together. It is not natural. I mean, it was fun for a while, but I think everybody wants to come back to the office. And I think people want to engage. You saw that this morning with the Minister of Finance of Mexico. I've never heard such a loud applause from a small group as we heard this morning. And I think part of that was just being able to physically engage with him and with everyone else in the room. So my first goal, I think, for all of us should be to dialogue, to travel, to engage in person, and to spend time, with people. I kept saying to the team, you can maintain relationships long distance if you know the person. Yeah. But when you don't know the person, and there are a lot of new presidencies, for example, that are coming online in Latin America, when you don't know the person, it is very difficult to build this relationship long distance just by Zoom or just by WebEx or virtually. So I think it's really important that we get out, that we travel, that we engage with governments from the region and exchange views of what's important to those governments and how can we be supportive at a time when, there is a lot happening in Latin America. There, as I said, new governments, there's generational change. There is how do you return countries to growth, but growth at a period where there's inflation. I mean, the United States is going to have more inflation than we've had in 40 years, 7.5%. And that is before the war in Ukraine, where we're not only going to see higher energy prices, but people haven't even begun to focus on higher food prices because of grain. So I think that, we've got to get out there and figure out how can we be supportive. to the leaders of Latin America? How can we help the public and private sector engage, re-engage in this very, very valuable dialogue?
Absolutely. I think, again, for me, it's one of the key learnings. Collaboration is what allows us to get out of this, and it's going to be the way we will be able to manage current and future challenges.
Yeah, and there are going to be a lot of them, and we're watching it. The markets reprice themselves as we sit here, right? So moving back to you, tell me about your personal goals for 2022.
One specific one has to do about what you just said, and the changes and the need to go back a little bit to what we had before, right? It's the first time I'm traveling to the US in 2 years. Right? I work from home for the past 2 years. It's important. It really makes a difference. The fact that I was there at that breakfast with the secretary and with you and with the rest of the people, the interaction is different. So definitely there's a value to it. But my goal is to try to find the right balance. Right? I mentioned at the beginning that I enjoy a great time working from home, having my kid, my wife there. We cannot go back to what it was before, in which we just go back to work and we're outside all the time and lose that privilege that we have to be closer to families and maintain that. I think it's my personal goal. So I want to travel more. I need to travel more, but I also want to be respectful with my personal time and be there with my kid and my wife. So finding that balance, I think it's my personal goal. And that applies also to our organization. We need to get back to a more face-to-face type of interactions, and we're reopening our offices too. And we have to find the right balance. It's not that we have to go back to what we had before, but also it cannot be to what we had the past 2 years. This personal connection, Susan, it's important. So that's my personal goal, really, and both personally and professionally, is to find the right balance. Technology helps a lot, immensely. I think we've learned tremendously also how much has changed and helped us our lives. So we have to be smart how we use it to really find the right sweet spot on this.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, for me, these last 2 years at the beginning of the pandemic, my grown children lived with me. I mean, when will that ever happen again in my lifetime, right? So it was my daughter and her fiance, and then my son and his girlfriend. I mean, it was just amazing. And it really has, I think, all of us made us think about what is the right balance. Just going back to traveling 24/7 and never being part of your family or engaging. I think those days are also over.
Yeah, they have to be. I think we cannot lose what we learn and what we've seen of the importance of this other part and the balance that we need to achieve.
Of family and friends and
Absolutely.
And so, as you look forward, and you talk to your team and you provide, leadership to your team, do you stress that in your conversations with them, in your town meetings or whatever?
We're starting to talk more and more about that, and I started to discuss that very, very directly with the country managers that we have. They're the leaders of our organization. They do need to do that. They do need to do that. We need to force our colleagues to feel at ease to go back to our offices and interact directly with customers, because we also need to get out of what we've been the past 2 years, but also at the same time be able to do it maintaining the balance. So there will be right moments when it's better to work from home. You're going to be connected all day in meetings with people from other countries. What's the point of driving to the office? You do it from the comfort of your of your home. But then you have meeting with your team. They're physically in the same city. the chance of going to the office and have the meeting there, it's also important. So we're starting to talk more and more. And it's one of the things that we're working as an organization to really find again that balance.
I think a lot of organizations are trying to find that balance around the world.
And we're seeing also with our customers, right? Before, our model was through our sales force with the physicians, with our customers, the doctors. Past 2 years, we tremendously changed that. We're interacting with them via technology and platforms that it has value. It's more efficient many times. But even our own customers are saying, it's good that I was connecting with you via Zoom when you were not able to come back physically. But now that you can do it, come here. They also need that interaction. So it's not only internally, but also with our customers.
So I'm going to add something that wasn't in there. Has your customer base changed? I mean, because for vaccines, you were interacting only with governments, right? And before you would interact with hospitals or other clients. So have your relationships changed?
They have changed, but not necessarily because of the pandemic. They have been changing for a number of years now. It's an evolution of the industry that it's, again, predates the pandemic. Before, our main customer was the doctor, the physician. For a number of years now, we know that it's still fundamental customer, but there are other customers that we need to also approach. Regulatory, payers, administrative people. So it has completely changed. Our portfolio has also changed. So how we get reimbursement for our medicines is fundamental. So maybe it doesn't matter if you have similar to the vaccine. It doesn't matter if you have a wonderful vaccine if you cannot get it to patients. So for many medicines, it's more about securing the reimbursement so that the customer, it's truly payers, government institutions. So it has changed. I think because of the pandemic, it has only accelerated certain of these changes that we were already seeing from before.
Interesting. And where is it going to go in the future, do you think?
At least from a portfolio, we know that more and more of what's coming, again, it's going to be a game changer in terms of our health, but that requires, again, different levels of collaborations. What we're seeing as new medicines, if the vaccine was mind-boggling, some of the things that are already out there, like gene therapy, it's even more mind-boggling. But that requires a different way of looking at health.
Right.
You cannot look at health like the way we used to do it and the medicine part of the treatment. We all need to look at the chain of health and price it, value it differently. So it's definitely going to change more. And we need to find ways.
So, Carlos, you mentioned Ehealth. And I know that in the United States, Ehealth has gone a long way. In Latin America, e-commerce has just exploded during the pandemic. Is that true of Ehealth as well in Latin America? And what's the path? What path do you see?
I think we're advancing. We're not there yet for sure. But I see a lot of movement and investment in e-health in Latin America. So I get the chance to be in the board or some funds in the region, and the amount of investment and the startups in e-health in Latin America, it's impressive. And some of the things that we're seeing are going to be game changers for health. The way they create connectivity, they create the benefits for patients. It's really fascinating time. We're, again, I think, starting to see. We haven't seen really the impact, but some of the things I'm seeing, I'm like, wow.
The entrepreneurial spirit is just incredible in Latin America. It's just, I almost don't do any discussion now about Latin America without talking about entrepreneurs, because it is so impressive to see the level of innovation and energy.
One example, Susan, is we're seeing a number of startups for education of physicians, either for preparations for medical bars exams as for life-going learning. And the numbers of the people, with physicians, getting their training through these new platforms, it's really, really surprising. Really
That's amazing. So, Carlos, we always like to finish our conversations with a question on leadership. What advice would you give to leaders in their efforts to drive businesses successfully while also benefiting all of their stakeholders?
I would say it's a tough question. I don't know if I have really knowledge to give advice, but something that I always say to myself and share with my team, Susan, is the importance of leading by example. Especially the more senior you are, if you truly walk the talk, you have a tremendous impact. And it's even in the most simpler things. If your organization sees a disconnect between what you do and your values and what you preach and how you act, it doesn't go well. So really leading by example and maintaining this walking the talk, I think it's important. The big things and the minor things. And the other thing that I believe I learned also more during this past years is the importance of being humble. Contrary to what I would believe that the more senior you are, what all, it's the contrary. You have to be more open and humble to actually ask questions, be open to feedback, and connect that way with internally, but also externally. And I think clearly we're seeing that business doesn't have to be a zero-sum game.
Right.
There are benefits for the organization, for profit, we drive profit, but there's also benefits for the customers, benefits for the society as a whole. And I think we would achieve more of that if senior leaders are humble, they listen to their customers, they listen to their stakeholders, and they incorporate that on the way they work. I think, again, for me, it's a good example of what I've learned over the past number of years, given the situations we have lived.
Well, I want to thank you so much for this conversation this morning, Carlos. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It has been just a pleasure to host you. I hope to see you again very, very soon. We were talking about lots of ideas, and I wish you well. I wish all of our viewers a very good day. I hope that you will all stay well and healthy, of course. Good afternoon, and we look forward to having you at our next Bravo Leadership Forum or at any other program, virtually or now in person as well. So, Carlos, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this has really been fun. And
it's been a pleasure for me, and I'm very happy to have this chance. Thank you so much for the opportunity.